welcome to Season 3 of You're Not Alone with Townsend. My name is Townsend, and if you've followed my journey, you know that I'm not only a musician, but I'm also a mental health advocate. I use my platform to help spread awareness, love, build community, and simply help people feel less alone in their struggles. In the last couple of years, I've had the chance to interview people from all over the world about a huge variety of mental health topics, and I cannot thank each of you enough for helping us continue to shine a light on the world. Every other week this season, we're bringing you the best interviews we've had. Make sure to like and follow this podcast if you're enjoying it. And if you want to keep up with everything we've got going, follow us on socials at Townsendtmusic. Hope you enjoy. What is up, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of You're Not Alone with Townsend. I am so excited. I say that every week, but I literally am so excited. Today, we've got somebody named Landon. You've probably seen him on social media on Landon Talks. I had a lot of you guys hit me up and say he did a video recently about adult ADHD, and I got a lot of people saying, you need to look into that. You need to have him on your podcast. So guess what? We listened, we acted, and he freaking responded. I'm so excited. Landon, thank you so much for joining me and my listeners today.
I'm just so glad y'all asked me and so glad y'all were interested in it. All your listeners. That's so great.
Yes, absolutely. I told him earlier, so he's in Mississippi. I'm in Arkansas. So this is going to be one Southern podcast.
Neighbors on a podcast. Y'all watch out.
Yes, we got that twang going today, and I love it so much. I feel like I'm at home talking to a family member right now.
It'll get worse the more we talk to each other. By the end of this episode, we're going to be real country.
We're going to be like, hey, y'all over yonder.
For sure.
I also just have to point out, if you're watching the video, Landon, you've got beautiful hair.
Thank you. It's so controversial. What? I don't have anything to do with it besides my father-in-law cuts it, and he's like the pageant hair guy.
Yeah.
I've got a good hairstylist, but people ask me all the time about my hair routine, and I feel so bad about it because it's just like wash it with what's ever in the bathtub, and then I don't brush it or dry it or anything. Just like go with it.
It's beautiful.
That's all I got for y'all. Everybody asks me all the time, but I don't have any good news about it. Just do what you do less.
Less is more. Well, it's beautiful. For the people that are listening, yeah, it's thick and shiny and luxurious, and I just want to like touch it. That's weird, but here we are.
You could if we were here.
Oh, that's so sweet. Friends, feel like I want to braid it. This got weird quick.
I actually immediately weird. No, I actually have a very funny story about people braiding my hair. I worked in a hospital before for a while on my ADHD journey. I worked in a hospital, and I would just like be best friends with the patients. And some of them were like not safe people. And I would spend like a whole night, like we'd braid each other's hair or like have a good, just doing all that kind of stuff. And then the next day they would like assault 3 nurses or something along those lines. And I'd be like, whoa, that's a different experience than I had.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah. I also worked in the hospital. I got some crazy stories. We'd have to do another podcast on that one for sure.
It's good that they don't let us talk about that.
Oh, no, absolutely.
We don't need to. It doesn't need to be talked about.
HIPAA's like, please don't go home and tell people that you got stabbed with a pin today.
Yes.
Landon, I usually like to have my guests come on and just kind of introduce themselves. So your job, your location, whatever you want to share with my listeners, go to town.
Well, great. I'm Landon Bryant. I'm from Laurel, Mississippi. I could not tell you what my job is. It is whatever this is that I do. I do social media. I have written a book. I do stand-up. I do really anything they ask me to do. I'll probably get down to it if we can get it on the schedule. But that's what I do, I guess. So I guess that would be like content creator.
Yeah.
Influencer sounds weird. I don't know. But that's what I do. And I talk about the South, which is all I know. So it's pretty easy for me to do because it's what I know, and now it's blown up, and they've got a really great, the best people on the internet in my audience, and we have a great time cutting up on there.
That is amazing. What's your book about?
My book is A Field Guide to All Things Southern. Bless your heart, A Field Guide to All Things Southern. And it was a very fun process to write. I'm sure we'll talk about it some more, but it is basically, if you're not from the South, this is literally a field guide to the South. You will understand our ways after reading this book. If you are from the South, you're going to think it's hilarious, all the things that I had to make footnotes for and have cross references about because the editors were not Southern. So they didn't know anything I was talking about. So it turned into a real actual reference guide
that is
of what is Southern and what is not. And it's very fun.
That is awesome. Okay, I love that. And then we were talking about before we hopped on here, you're actually about to go on tour to do stand-up and comedy. What?
Yes, I love to do stand up so much. I've always, I mean, kind of like living in the South and being ADHD, my whole shtick has been trying to be funny with these people and like trying to say the right thing, you know?
Yeah.
So stand up on the stage is a natural extension of just a regular Sunday lunch
Wow.
with my family. And I really have enjoyed it. I really love to connect with audiences. I was a theater nerd all through high school, all through elementary school. So stand up is very a natural extension of that. I always thought I'd be singing or dancing on the stage, but stand up is just as fun, and I'm having a great time. And we've done a bunch of shows, and we've got a bunch coming up, and then we'll see where it goes from there. And
That
I
is
literally have no
amazing.
idea.
Landon, that is so cool. Congratulations on all your success. It is so neat watching you. And like I said, my guests love you. So I know I will too. I'm super excited to get to chat with you today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Absolutely. Okay, so like we said earlier, Landon does a ton of things, but I wanted today to focus on he posted recently about getting an ADHD diagnosis or ADD diagnosis as an adult, and that seems to be incredibly common. I'm seeing that and hearing that more and more through friends and followers. So I want to touch on that a little bit because obviously we focus on mental health on this podcast. So Landon, you received a diagnosis as an adult, and I'd love to get into that. So, when did you get your formal diagnosis? When did that happen?
All right.
Are you enjoying this conversation? This project is funded by patrons and sponsors. So, if you like what you hear and you'd like to help us continue changing lives in 2024, we would love to have you join the family. Reach out to us at townsendtmusic@hotmail.com if you'd like to be a sponsor, or hop on patreon.com/townsendtmusic to join the patron family. As a thank you, you're going to receive extra podcast questions and content every episode, discounts, exclusive content, and so much more. So join the family and let's continue changing lives.
Well, and first, let me say that I'm so glad that people are interested in it. And I'm so glad that there's people like you sharing things about mental health. It's stuff that we just need to talk about, y'all. It's
That's
stuff that
right.
needs to be out there. It's not anything to be ashamed of. And it's something that people deal with. So I'm glad that to be having conversations like these. And I'm so blown away that the response to that video, it has been. But so I got an adult diagnosis of ADHD. And I guess really before the diagnosis, it goes back to like growing up with ADHD and not being diagnosed with it was very impactful on me. So went through a bunch of things, but finally got my diagnosis when I guess it was in 2012, which would make me like 22, something
Yeah.
around it. So around in there, 21 or 22, around in
Mhm.
that age. And it was just a revolutionary moment for me. And it wasn't one moment necessarily after that diagnosis that changed how I feel about things. It's taken me a long time to believe the diagnosis and to understand what ADHD is and to understand about myself. So it had the diagnosis in my early 20s, and I'm 36 now, and I'm still figuring it out today.
Yeah. You know, what's crazy is I've seen several of my friends and followers post about getting a diagnosis recently of ADHD or autism or whatever, and they're in their 30s. And so, as cool as it is, you're like, okay, this makes sense. It's also like, whoa, now what? What do I do with this
Yes,
information? It's a little bit scary.
it is. And it's kind of like there's a lot you can do with the information because there's a lot of responses you could have to that. Because for me personally, I had spent my whole life knowing that I was different than everybody that I was around. Like my sister she's so normal and she's so good and she's just, she's just like a regular person
Freaking
and
normal
just a
people.
good person. And I knew that I was not that I didn't have the same skills that she had. And then in school, I'm an intelligent person and my family are all educators. I had great systems set up, so school wasn't hard. And that was kind of like what they looked for
Yeah.
ADHD in the 90s and 80s. And so it just like slipped by. So I spent 2 whole decades or more not even knowing really what ADHD was in fully. To me, it was like the kid that couldn't sit still in class. And I do have a hard time sitting still, but I'm able to manage that. But it is just once you have the diagnosis of that later in life, then you have to decide first what happens next with that information. But then you also have to reconcile like all the things that have happened to you your whole life that are a direct result of undiagnosed ADHD. And there's like a bit of loss and kind of trauma is a very intense word, I would say, but there is a lot there. And there's a lot of thinking about what if this had happened, what if that had happened, and you've got to deal with that. You've got to like move forward in life and recognize the things that could have been and maybe would be a little bit different, and then move forward. But it also comes to believing believing the diagnosis, understanding it, and knowing that maybe those failures that you experience as someone with undiagnosed ADHD, maybe it wasn't a personal failure, maybe you weren't just being lazy, maybe it was ADHD. And dealing with all those feelings and those thoughts is it's a lot to take in. So anybody that's going through that, I would just say, take your time, take some deep breaths. This is not an overnight process. It is, I'm over a decade in it, and I'm still learning things about myself and about the condition daily.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. Were there some things looking back that made you think, all right, something's kind of off? Like you talked about, and something I find very typical of my friends is they are smart and they're good at school. And so that's why their diagnosis wasn't given to them as a child necessarily, because they're like, okay, school is easy. But so what were some things for you that you thought, all right, this might be a little off?
Yeah, well, I lost every item I ever had. Anything I ever owned, I've lost at
Just
least
gone.
7 or 8 times. It's gone. Glasses, wallet, retainers, anything like that. I just like really gave it to my mom with that kind of a thing. She was up at 3 in the morning looking for stuff all the time. Just always losing things, always kind of just scatterbrained. I was constantly told to focus, constantly told to pay attention, that kind of a thing. There was a lot of that. And the same with like my siblings or my cousins. They didn't have that same deal. And even like things like, I mean, I'm in Laurel, rural Mississippi, right? And so church is a big deal here. And just sitting through a church service was like I was it was torture to me to sit there that long, and nobody else seemed to have that problem with it. So there was that whole thing, and then I was like, well, what's going on there?
I'm a
The
sinner.
whole right, like what's going on here? So that kind of a thing, and all through high school is that. But like I said, I had really great systems set up. I had really good teachers, and I had really good family members, and our life was just so leave it to beaver. Like there was dinner every night, there was homework time, there was I was on the swim team. There was all the stuff. So it was all so structured. So I didn't really have any leeway to mess things up as the way ADHD people mess things up, because it wasn't like available. It was just like do, go, go, go. And that's what we do, right? So the moment I got out of my parents' house and into college, like into my own dorm room and my own schedule, it was like within 2 weeks, it was like, whoa, okay, I have no idea how to study. I have no idea how to set up systems to get the things done I'm supposed to do. If there's like a deadline that was like weeks ahead, I was not going to think about that until the day before. All those kinds of things. And when you get to a college program, and I moved, this is funny to me now in retrospect. I wanted to get out of Laurel and go somewhere, so I went to Starkville, Mississippi.
Oh boy, big,
Just got out to the big
big,
city, Starkville.
big city.
And it was pretty clear, like really quickly, that this is different than what I've experienced before. I'd always been so successful. And I mean, by midterms, I was like failing all the classes and just really overwhelmed with like, I don't even know how to go about starting this process of like understanding how to do this. And so college, my first round of college was that. It was like starting, being confused, trying to figure it out, and then slowly over the semester just dropping off constantly, every semester dropping off constantly. So I bounced from program to program. I started in architecture school at Mississippi State. I ended up in nursing school at Mississippi College. And none of it worked out. And I'm glad that none of it worked out, because that wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be doing this that I do now for sure. But the experiences were very valuable. And I had always been so high achieving and like top of my class and like good at all the things and a state record swimmer, that kind of person. So failing at stuff was very revolutionary for me and not an experience I had. And it was really not great. It's like not a great time for me personally. So I've lost the train of thought of what this question started as, but I can keep talking about what we're talking about.
I love
Very on brand.
I love how well that went with this right now. Okay, so we were talking about how thinking back, like so I'm sorry, that's so funny. Something you
That's
felt like was
the
off. I love it though. This is real life.
truth.
Something we talked about, like looking back, what felt off. So And I love that. It's so on brand. And it's everything I'm hearing from all of my friends is
Mhm.
high school was great. It was easy. I got to college. I had to make my choices. I picked 77 majors because I couldn't stick with something.
Yes.
What was the straw that broke the camel's back that was like, all right, I need to look into testing? Like what was that moment of I need to get tested?
So, well, and I'm embarrassed that I don't know this lady's name. She is a professor at USM now, and she was also a professor at Mississippi College in the nursing school at Mississippi College. And I made it through so first semester in nursing school. I didn't make it just by like little bit. So I redid that first semester and made it to the second semester and kept going and got all the way. And then I got to like the end of it, and if you failed one semester in nursing school, you can't fail another one or you're out of the program. So it's a whole deal. So when it came to that for me, I was like at that last test, I would always get to like the last test and it would be like if you make this, you're going to pass, or if you don't make this, it's not going to pass. So I got there and the teachers were almost, it's like they were confused about it. They didn't want me to fail by any means. And they had done this the whole time, things to keep me going, but so in that conversation, when they call you in and they're like, listen, this is not working, you're going to have to find either sit out a year or come back, that whole situation. This lady, she was like, listen, this is going to sound strange to you, but I think that there's something else going on. Like, she was like, you've done the stuff we told you to do. You do the work in clinicals. You're excellent. Like everything is going really well. But then when it comes to these tests, something is going wrong. Like there's something wrong. She was like, if I was talking to you, you would pass this test. But when it's just you left on the test, something happens. So why don't you look into that? So when I left that program, I came home to Laurel and I just started working in the hospital here as a tech in the emergency room in the ICU, which is you do want ADHD people on your emergency team. Every day is an emergency. I've been like ready for the emergency at every moment. So it's not any different. CPR or just getting ready for whatever we're doing, same level of emergency. I'm at that level all the time. So I learned a lot about myself at the emergency room. But when I decided I was going to get married and I decided I was going to go back to school, and I immediately went to the office at University of Southern Mississippi. That's a university close to me. It's in Hattiesburg. And my wife had gone there and she loved it. It's a great place. So I went there and I went to the advisory staff immediately and was like, listen, here's my academic history. You can see that it is not good in college, but in high school it's really good. This is what this lady told me. And she had moved to Southern, that professor. She was in the nursing school at Southern, but she had moved there. So she kind of pointed me in. They were like, let's talk to her. So they talked to her. She was like, yes, there's something going on here. He's very smart, but just know there's a connection missing. And so then that got me referred to the Office of Disabilities and Accommodations at Southern. And they got me up an appointment with a behavioral health specialist, actually through the hospital I was working in at South Central Regional Medical Center in Laurel. And kind of like the first day of the screener, the lady was like, whoa, okay.
Welcome.
You definitely do, as evidenced by our conversation so far, so I got that diagnosis then, and then took it to the Office of Disabilities Accommodations, and they kind of helped me set up systems and the accommodations that I needed to get through school. And I think like the proof is in the pudding, as they say, in that I failed every other school I went to, but I was very successful at USM and graduated in a year and a half after that. So it was pretty obvious that these accommodations worked for me, and there was something going on crazy. And I really appreciate Southern for doing that. I don't even think they realized like what they did is things like they give you this letter that explains the accommodations that you need, which could be anything from like some people need the notes given to them. Some people need longer on tests. Some people need some help with deadlines. Some people need to have a verbal conversation instead of like online modules, whatever it is for you personally. They work with you to figure that out. But they were like, okay, now take this letter to your professors. And I think she saw it on my face. They were like, you're not going to take these letters, are you? I was like, I don't think I'm going to. So they even like took them to my professors for me. And that was just so that I wouldn't have ever turned that in, because I was still in the early stages of like even believing in ADHD as a thing. I'm certainly not going to go like ask my professors for special conditions, so them doing that and recognizing that I probably wasn't going to do that was so key.
Yeah.
Because I would have then had this diagnosis, but no benefit from that. And I don't think I would have I don't think I would have passed the classes like I did. So shout out to USF. They really made it happen. And I'm really, really proud to be an alumni of Southern Miss.
That really is incredibly impressive. Or what would happen to my friends is they give you a piece of paper and they say, hey, take this. You put it in your backpack and it's gone.
Right. And it lives there in the backpack. That was what was going to happen. I like imagined it in my head. I was like, okay, so this is going here and nobody will ever see this again. So they really did do that. And I don't even know if that's like legal for them to have done. Even like it could be like not a thing they're supposed to do. And if it's not legal, then they did not do that. I took the letters.
Did not. I gave them permission. I signed a contract saying
hypothetically though.
Hypothetically, they saved my life. Hey, I love that is amazing. That's going one step beyond, which I love. Okay, so something I have heard things of is when receiving a diagnosis, the test, a lot of people are like, the test takes hours and hours and hours. What did that look like for you? Like, was it testing? Was it screening? Was it a conversation?
It was a screening and a conversation. And I think honestly, I don't know this for sure. This is not, I'm obviously not a medical doctor, but I feel like the length of that has to do with the test. It felt like to me, like a lot of the things I was doing were redundant and over again. And I was like, y'all are testing how long I can handle this, like how long I can stay here. And I don't know if that's the truth. They may not have been. It might just have been.
Are you testing me for other things, for anger but I was issues?
Like, I'm on to y'all. I know that this is a test. Anyways, so that's what it looked like for me. It was a screener and then just conversational with my doctor at the time. And so that's how it worked for me. I know a lot of people go through a lot of screening and like a lot of conversations. For me, it was like one appointment and then the test. And then it was like, this is what
he's definitely here.
Yeah.
So one, I love that they gave you those recommendations and accommodations and things like that. Since outside of school, what were some recommendations after your diagnosis? Like, did they recommend medication? Did they recommend a type of therapy?
They did recommend medication, and that's a whole thing that you have to, that's a personal journey for everybody, that it may not be the right thing for you. And then the medication journey itself is wild. It's like a wild thing because there's so many different medications to come at it from. There's some that are stimulants, some that are not stimulants. And there's no way to know what's going to work for you. I mean, there may be doctors might know. I don't know of a way to say this is the medicine for you.
Right.
I think it's kind of just trial and error. So that's another thing. If you're starting this journey of ADHD, buckle up because it's a ride, and it's not. It's taken years to get on the right medicines and the right therapeutic things. And it's just been trial and error to see what works for you at first. Like the first medicine that they tried was not for me at all. I think it was like Concerta, which is like extended release Ritalin type of a thing. And that works differently than Adderall, works differently than Vyvanse. They all work differently than each other. And it did not work for me. I was like alphabetizing things and doing things that were not necessary and like losing my mind and being like, so that is a long journey and it's very personal and it's kind of up to you to figure that out. And I would say, if you're starting this, you have to advocate for yourself. If you just go into your doctor's appointments every month, or like at first, it's usually like every month to see how it's working and catch up. If you tell them it's fine, everything's fine, then everything's fine. And you're going to get that same medicine and nothing's ever going to change. So this is a time when you have to speak up for yourself, which being Southern, that's not our big boy. We're not very direct.
Isn't that right?
So you got it, but that's something that you got to do. So medicine is wild. And then obtaining the medicine, keeping the medicine in stock, it's a task. It really is a task. And now it's even more regulated than it used to be. Yeah. It is not a great feeling to go try to pick up your medicine and you're a day early or something's messed up. They're going to make you feel like a drug seeker a lot of the times with these specific medicines. And so that's something to come to terms with. And I hate that's part of it, but it just is. I haven't found a way around that feeling. Get a good relationship with your pharmacy and your pharmacist and try to go from there. Cause it's really nuts. It's like a wild system that you have to navigate, especially being ADHD. I'm like, if I had the medicine, I could do all those things.
Yeah. You're like, give it to me. I remembered to come to the pharmacy. Please just give it to me because I won't remember the next time.
Right. And you'll have to call your doctor and get them to do an authorization or like maybe this pharmacy doesn't have the medicine, but the one across the street does. Doesn't matter. You've got to go back to the doctor, get a whole nother physical prescription, take that. So there's a lot of hoops to go through, and you're already like at a deficit of being able to go through those hoops. So it's like persevere through the medical part, the medicines part of it. I wish that I had advice to be like, this will make it easier, but I have just, you got to know the, I think relationships are the best way to go about that.
Yeah, man, I love that we're talking about this because these are all things that I have heard that my friends, I don't struggle with it personally, but my friends, I hear these exact complaints. And the biggest one is
Mhm.
you go get your medicine, you wait in line, you remember to get it filled, you get to the window and they're like, oh, you're a day early, you got to come tomorrow,
Yes,
or oh, we're out, come tomorrow. And they're like, I remembered today, I won't remember tomorrow. So we talked
exactly.
about side effects and things like that. You've tried different medications. Have you had any other side effects other than like alphabet, like hyper focus?
Yes, definitely. And it just, the different medicines do different things. For me, Vyvanse was a little, it, there was like an angry element to Vyvanse. What I'm on now is like, it's called dextroamphetamine. And I have less side effects of it, but it is short acting. So it's kind of like I traded those. It's just a trade off. Which side effects can you handle the most? Like Vyvanse I was just a little upset, a little too upset on Vyvanse. Concerta was a little bit too much. It was like too much of a feeling. And the Adderall it works really well, or the dextroamphetamine, it works really well, but it's like a roller coaster ride. It is like a 6 hour situation, and you've got an hour to get going, and then you've got a few hours of focus, and then it's a crash, and then you've got to do it again in the afternoon. So it's like signing up for this daily roller coaster ride of feelings, which can be exhausting. So you've got to really think about like, do you need a day off? Can you handle the day off? For me, I have a really hard time trusting myself, like with driving. I have an 11-year-old and I don't want to mess whatever he's got going on up by like forgetting something. So it's really scary for me to not take the medicine because it's like very clear on the days that I don't take it, the mistakes that I make and things that don't happen that need to happen. So it's just, again, it's just a balance of like, how much can you handle? And now, and even now, I'm like 36, headed towards 40, and the long-term usage of this medicine is something I've got to think about, like how
Right.
balancing the damage that the medicine can do to your body versus like the damage I can do to my body
Right.
without the medicine is a balance to figure out. So it's taking
Right.
it month by month. I actually had my
That's right.
appointment today
Oh, well,
to
there you
talk about
go.
it. And so we're just going to like continue going on, and then we'll in 3 months revisit it again.
There you go. Now, you had mentioned therapy. Do you go to therapy as well?
Yes, well, the behavioral health I'd go to, we do cognitive behavioral therapy there as well, and that really works for me. It helps me reframe the things that I am thinking, and I think it's very important to not just rely on the medication. If you're just relying on the medication, then when there are shortages, and there will be, then you're kind of just like out of luck immediately again. So it's very good to like, for me, therapeutic things that aren't medication don't necessarily fix the ADHD for me,
Right.
but they make me more aware of what my brain is doing. It makes me more aware of like what is happening. And that helps me understand what's going on. And if I can stop myself in the moment and like be like, pause, you know why you feel this way. This is not like, this is not real life. This is your brain is making this feeling. That's easier to handle than if you don't have that thought in your head. And if you're just like, I am overwhelmed. I'm overwhelmed. It's
Yeah.
like, wait, you're overwhelmed because you have ADHD and this is how your brain works. So can we take that information and twist it into making this situation work for you?
I love it. I have actually seen, do you ever have the overwhelm or you just shut down, you just freeze?
Oh,
You
so
like
much. And it's like this
paralysis.
paralysis. And it's like, it's an executive function situation. It's like, do I have the ability to executively function today? And like, no, a lot of
Mm.
times, no, I don't. And it's a memory processing disorder. So that's part of it as well. And that was hard for me to understand and believe for a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's hard for people that don't have this diagnosis to realize it's not you're a bad kid. It's not because you're not paying attention. As a matter of fact, a lot of people with ADHD pay amazing attention when they're doing
Exactly.
something else. They just can't focus on that one thing. But I have witnessed personally some of my friends have that paralysis where like the dishes are dirty or whatever, and they're just staring at them. And I had a counselor on this podcast one time tell me that something that helps tremendously is setting a timer saying, I bet you
Oh,
can't do
yes.
those in less than 7 minutes or whatever, or having a buddy system where literally just having
Mhm.
someone there watching it for whatever reason triggers that executive functioning response, which is really cool.
That body mirroring, it really does do, it
Yes.
really does. I don't know what the difference is, but it really is. And it is executive functioning. It's like wondering how to get the things started, just like getting the things
Yes.
going is a monumental task. Once it's going, I'm into it. Let's do
Yeah.
it. And I can hyper focus with the best of them. I
Yeah.
went to a writing like workshop with Julia Fowler. She's another content creator, and I spent like 2 days intensively writing at her house. And at the end, ADHD got brought up, and she was like, "I didn't think you had that at all. You focus so well." But yeah, because this is a new
Because
fun
you
thing
love
that
it.
I'm doing, and it's like very fun. If we did this for four or five more days, probably wouldn't be focusing
You'd be
all the way
out.
through the day, right? Like
I'd
it's
be
not
outside.
novel, it's not exciting. But if it's new and exciting and something I'm into, like can do it all, like I'll lose track of the time even. So it's not like not paying attention. It's that I was paying attention so much to this that I didn't pay attention to literally anything else, my own body, the room around me, like none of that was part of what I was just what I was doing right then.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain.
No, I love it. I love it. This is all so, so good. You know, I have read something recently in the past year that like over 8 million adults have ADHD, and those are just the ones that are aware of it. And these are, I mean, I feel like our generation is becoming more aware and more conversations about mental health. So there are more testing and more diagnosis happening. So I imagine that number is going to skyrocket.
Mm-hmm.
But
I
that's
agree, and
crazy.
I hope that people find the help they need. That it's just a serious thing. There is a lot of damage that can be done to not having that diagnosis because again, it, that changes how you feel about yourself and the things that you've done. So
Yeah,
it's valuable. So if any of y'all
absolutely.
have feeling like you want to want to look into it, look into it. That's what they're there for. That's what professionals are there for. And I understand healthcare is very much a privilege. But if you have access to it, just go have a chat. It can't
I
hurt.
agree. I agree. Absolutely. And I hate when people, like, I kind of touched on this earlier, but they're a bad kid or whatever. You get in trouble or you fail and you're like, oh, you're stupid. It's just so not, it's not right, right? If you just gave them these compensatory strategies or medication, they may excel. And so I just hate that we do that. And I've actually read something that, the therapist that I had on here talking about ADHD, she mentioned that ADHD or ADD is usually coupled with another diagnosis. So a lot of the time, a really high percentage of the time, it goes along with anxiety or goes along with autism or neurodivergent or something like that. So pretty interesting.
Definitely, and I definitely have the generalized anxiety disorder
There you go.
diagnosis to go along with it, but it's like as a direct result of ADHD, undiagnosed
Oh,
ADHD. Like that's what it's from. I think I would probably be an anxious person anyways, but then I say that because like I have some family members who are anxious, but then I'm like, well, what if they might have ADHD too? And then I think about that, but I can't diagnose anybody. That's not my place. But yes, definitely. It anxiety comes to do with a lot of it. And it's for me, this is the anxiety. The anxiety is it goes back to those years of failing in college. Like I did the study and I did what I was supposed to do, or I thought I did. I thought I was ready for this test. And then surprise, you weren't ready and you thought you were. So anytime I have a task or like a new thing going on, I have this like belief in myself that I have to squash down. That's like, you're going to fail no matter what you do at this. Like there's no way you're going to be successful at this. And so there's always a level of anxiety behind almost everything I do that has is directly related to those times that I did fail at the thing. It's very difficult for me to believe that I'm going to actually deliver the thing, whatever it is that I need to deliver. Like I wrote a book and I had deadlines for things like that. And the whole time I was writing the book, as I was like actively writing the book, I would have like thousands of words and I would be like, but you're not going to do this right.
yeah.
Like you're going to get it there to them and they're going to be like, this is not what we asked for. This is like not what we said. This is not how we said to do it. Something like that. So is a level of anxiety that is there that wouldn't be there if I had not had those experiences. So that's kind of what I try to like internalize all the time of like that wasn't a personal failing. That was
Yep.
how we were looking at things. And now we have things reframed. So it's a constantly reminded myself of that is what I spend a lot of time doing now.
I love that. Love it. And I hope my listeners take that into account because I feel like that's going to be a really common theme of I'm a failure, but you're not. You're
Yes.
not, right? There are ways to get around that.
Right.
Yeah, so it's usually coupled with another diagnosis. I believe I read something where it affects boys more than girls. And get this, the diagnosis, I believe I remember from our last conversation was you're usually diagnosed by the age of 7.
Wow. And see,
Yeah.
I think that goes back to how we view it as society. And
Yes.
I could be wrong about this, but it seems like that the reason it would be more boys and why it would be more younger, I think that we have this idea that it's behavior, like that it's like a
Yes.
how you're acting in class type of a situation. And for women and for me, it doesn't show up that way. Like it shows up in
Right.
very different ways. And if you're not looking very closely, it would be very hard to understand that that's even on the table because again, we like the school system is supposed to notice that they notice it because of the way you're acting in class and the way you're physically acting. And it's a up here type of a situation. And I scooted right through school without any
Yeah.
problems. You know, I was never the behavior problem. I just did what I was supposed to, did what I was told. But if I had ever had to intrinsically do anything in high school,
Right.
it would never have happened. So that is a whole thing. I think a lot of women will be more, I hope. I mean, I don't want a lot of women to be
Right.
diagnosed,
What
but
are you saying, Lena? No,
I,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I think I think it presents differently in women
Right.
and in some people. And I hope that we're more aware of that as a society, the way that it presents now, so that more people can get the diagnosis they want. And I feel like it's those people who were skipped over from the earlier diagnosis are probably the ones that are struggling with the anxiety that goes around with it because you have been nobody's told you there could be anything but your own personal failings this whole time. So there's going to be a lot of anxiety around that. And I see that conversation online a lot. I think it's very important that we like really as a society investigate the differences in men and women and this diagnosis and how it shows up and how people look for it because it's important that everybody has the same access and everybody's looked at the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like we said earlier, our generation's coming around and we're making great strides. We're not there yet, but in the South, I can speak from Arkansas and Mississippi. Women are, you're supposed to be prim and proper and quiet and all those things. And so I feel like if you weren't, you were just a bad kid. You just got slapped
Right.
on the wrist and told to be quiet. And so, of course, these diagnoses would be looked over when we were kids, but hopefully we're headed in the right direction. So I had some listeners want me to ask you some questions. And one of them was, do you find the ADHD as an adult affects your productivity at work? And does motivation to stay on your tasks for work come and go? So even as a content creator, you're your boss, but does productivity, is that a struggle for you?
Very much. And
Yeah.
I mean, like that is the struggle is there's some days where you're ready to do it all. And there's some days where there's no get up and go. There's like nothing in the tank, and it is variable like that. So I've set up a bunch of systems. I'm really blessed that I married the woman that my wife, Caitlin, she was a sped teacher in school.
Oh,
And
wow.
she was almost at her doctorate with special education. And so she fully understands how to accommodate people for this, specifically ADHD and autism. And we worked at a really incredible school that was high performing students. And that's who she worked with. So she really knows what she's talking about as far as that goes. So, like with my book and with my daily schedule, she really manages the expectations and like what I can load myself up with because you can't load yourself up too much. But then I also hired my friend Terry Knight. She's lives in Laurel with me, and she manages my schedule for me. And so instead of having all these little things floating around here, little tasks that it's on the schedule, it's on the to-do list. Just have to look at that to-do list, and I don't have to try to remember those little things that I'm not going to remember. I'm going to forget, and then I'm going to feel bad about, and then it's the whole process, right? So I've had to learn to kind of outsource
Right.
my brain in a way, like outsource what's going on, and those things really help me get things going. Without them, this would not happen by any means. And even now, we've worked together for so long, and my wife's known me for so long that we kind of can set up the week's schedule to build in a time where there's going to be a day where I'm not going to want to do it, you know? So even that kind of a thing, building that into the system. So yes, it definitely affects my daily work. And then the idea of novelty, like when something is new and exciting, stoked on it. Like we started a newsletter like a while back, I think, and I was so excited for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And
Like, I
then
hate
then I was like, oh,
it.
I'm so bored. But I'm learning to like do that when I have the feeling to do it instead of like, it has to be done this day. I've got this week to do this. So when I'm feeling it, do it. It's little things like that. It's little things like knowing that if there's not a deadline, it's not going to happen. It won't happen. That's not going to happen. So Terry knows that, Caitlin knows that, and they build that into my schedule. I have a suspicion that most of these due dates in my schedule are not real,
Yeah.
but that's smart of them. And I'm just going to go with that. That is when it's due, you know?
Yeah. You just tell yourself it's true. All of it is true.
That's definitely when it's due.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I love that you have a support system, and I think that's huge. Were there other strategies and tips, tricks that you've learned to kind of help you through those mundane tasks? Like, so for people that go to 8 to 5 or whatever, or come home, what have you learned through therapy or through getting through this diagnosis for a decade?
Yeah, well, our brains are reward systems, right? They give us they give us the dopamine when we're doing what we want to be doing and when we're interested in something. So it's kind of like hacking your hacking your dopamine system and making it to where there's something to work for. And I think like if you have an 8 to 5 job, and I've had 7 to 7 jobs before, and that's a long period of time. And so if you're looking at it, if I go into it looking at I'm fixing to have to work for 12 hours, that is like complete overwhelm. I'm going to lay down on the floor and nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
But if I can make the next 45 minutes all I'm focused on, and then at the end of those 45 minutes, I'm going to go have a chat, or I'm going to go get a soda or whatever it is, that's not healthy, but you know,
Right.
whatever it is that is just a little treat for you, that really does help. It really does help.
Yeah.
And you can take that too far and like not let yourself enjoy things until you've done the task. And that's not very good. Right. But it's really nice to build in little reward moments throughout your day if that's possible. I think that's a way it's motivating for me, and it's a way to keep the mundaneness of the thing going. Like when I had to write the book, it was like 52,000 words I had to write. So it was that you can't do that in one day, turns out. And so, yeah, so every day I had to know I was going to do a little bit and then have a little treat of whatever that was, whether that was like going for a walk or like, I don't know, building those little things in. So that's what works for me the most. But again, it's very personal. So it's whatever works for you personally. That might not work for you. Maybe you need more lists. I can hyper focus on the list instead of doing the things on the list. So that's something I have to be aware of. Like I want to make the list and make the list perfect and then add the things to the list. And then by the end of making the list, it's 3 hours later and nothing's happened besides making the list. So you just kind of got to get to know yourself and what are you going to do in the situation? How are you going to handle it? And then go around that. Like for me, I don't need to make the list, or that's all I'm going to do all week. So Terry makes the list and breaks it into daily things that need to get done. And that really works. And I'm very fortunate to be able to have them on board for sure.
I love that. That's awesome. That's so cool. Did you find, so you were married, you have a kid, you have a manager slash friend. Do you find that your ADHD affects your relationships?
Oh, definitely, definitely, because it's all your motivation to want to do things. It's like this reward system, right? And so if there's no reward, you're not going to be into it. So you constantly, I have to be aware of that there are other people in my life that they might want to do things. It might not be appealing to my brain, but the idea of enhancing that relationship is appealing to my brain. So I have to focus on that for things that I might not be into. Like, I don't know anybody well, there are people that do want to go sit and watch a soccer game. You know, like there are people, I recognize that. I've never wanted
I
to
love
do
that you said
that.
nobody ever wants to do that, but here we
No, but nobody would want to do that, right? But no, I know there's like a large swath of people that do want to watch the soccer game. I've never wanted to watch the soccer game,
right.
but I want to support my child and I want to be there to do that. So it's just finding the reward that you will work for you. For me, going to sit by a soccer game that's not going to do anything for me. But going to watch my kid enjoy himself and knowing that I'm going to be there and make those memories, that does it for me. And I want that. So it's kind of just framing it how how you can trick your, it's like tricking myself all day long is what I'm doing basically.
Yeah. I love it though. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So the goodness that comes out of the relationship because of an action. I like that. What is, we talked about how this affects your mental health, affects your anxiety and all those things. What does self-care look like for you? How do you treat Landon?
Well, it looks like what we've been talking about. It looks like all
Yeah.
these accommodations that we've set up. It looks like
Yeah.
somebody keeping up with a list for me. So it's not little tiny tasks everywhere so that my brain is free to be creative. And I noticed immediately when Terry started taking over, I got so much more creative and I get so much more done. And I can make, like, I was barely getting one video done a day. And then she came on board and I did like 8 the first day and that she was on board. It's just like opening that space in your head to be able to be creative is so important and it gets so much stuff done. So that really, the team that I have is really my major accommodation that I have myself is like them keeping up with the things because I will forget them or I won't do it. I need the accountability of somebody that I know Terry, even though she's my friend. She's not like my boss or anything, but I know she's going to look at that to-do list later today. And there's an element of, I don't want to disappoint her and not having that done. So it's that accountability really gets me going. But then it's just being aware of yourself, I think, is the main thing, which is very hard to do. It's very hard to do because we're so emotional. We have all these feelings all the time. Thinking about that and being aware of that and trying to focus on that is something that I try to really do for myself throughout the day. And then it's breaking tasks up into smaller pieces, little tiny bites instead of large bites. It is I get to cross off on the shared to-do list that we have on my phone.
Yes.
I get to cross it off when it's done, and that really does it for me. I love to cross the things off the list. That's helpful for me.
Sometimes I'll put things on my list so that I can then cross it off. Do you do that?
Something you already did. I do that.
Yeah.
Just
so I can cross it off. Yeah. I'm like, did that.
Exactly. So it's just being aware and like building systems over time. It just takes a long time. I wish I could figure out a universal hack for people with ADHD and a universal way to be like, this medicine will work for you, this accommodation will work for you, but it's just your own lived experience. It's your personal experience. So it's kind of, you got to figure it out for yourself, but give yourself the grace to be able to figure it out and know that it may not go perfectly immediately.
Absolutely. I will say one thing I learned from the therapist that was on my last one talking about ADHD and going back to your family was that ADHD and ADD are typically hereditary. It does run in the family, but our generation is the one becoming more aware of it. So you may be able to diagnose those members.
I got my eye on a few of them.
I would go self-diagnose.
I know who it is.
Yeah, they're listening like, oh man, that sounds familiar. Where did you learn the most about ADHD or where did you find the most resources?
Okay, well, this is where I'm very glad to be part of your podcast because honestly, I mean, the behavioral health specialists at South Central really did do a whole lot, but there's only so many pamphlets you can read and there's, that it's the modern healthcare system. They're limited as to what they can do and how long they can spend with you. So this stuff like this is so important because places like this are where I've gotten a lot of my information. A podcast that I listen to like religiously is Ologies by Allie Ward. And she is a science person. She just like science. She's on like kids science shows a lot of times. Okay. But I love to listen to it. And her ADHD episode was one of the first times where somebody in plain regular English like explained ADHD. She had an expert come on like you had. And they just explained and I was like blown away. I was like, wait a second. Nobody's ever talked to me like this about it. Nobody's ever explained it so simply. Nobody's ever said it was a memory processing disorder because I can't remember all the stuff that I'm supposed to be doing. It was just very revolutionary for me. So honestly, the day I got the diagnosis was pretty remarkable. Mm-hmm. And then when I listened to that podcast, and I hope I get to tell her that one day, that was a day that really shifted it for me. And I was like, wait, let's look into this more. Before it was kind of just something I had done to appease the advisors and to get through school. It wasn't something that I really believed. I know that's so wild to say that, but that podcast episode really helped me like understand what this is and like be like, oh, okay. Wow. So you weren't just like slipping through and you weren't just like getting extra help. Like it really is a real thing. And so it's media, regular media is doing such a good job at bringing this to the forefront. People like you. So I'm really glad to be a part of this.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes. And that's why I do it. I hope that this brings more attention and more awareness to everybody. And Landon, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to wrap it up. I really appreciate you taking time to chat with my listeners today.
Well, I'm just so grateful you had me. I'm so grateful for your platform and what you do. And I speed listened to some of your episodes earlier so I could like know what I'm talking about a little bit. And I love it. So I'm excited to go through all your library.
Oh gosh, thank you so much. Same to you. It's been awesome watching your journey. I can't wait to see you on tour, all the awesome things you're going to be doing. I'm sure you'll have more books, more chats, all those things. All right, so listeners, you know how this works. Landon and I are going to do a few more questions, but they're going to be for my patrons only. That is how we sponsored these podcasts. This whole You're Not Alone with Townsend platform really is through patrons and sponsors. So hop on patreon.com/TownsendTmusic if you want to hear more. If not, we will catch you next time.
If you'd like to hear the rest of this interview, visit patreon.com/TownsendTmusic. And don't forget, you can also watch the interviews on our YouTube channel at Townsendtmusic YouTube.
If you're looking to buy or sell, I have the perfect realty company for you. Clark & Co. Realty is located in the Benton, Bryant, Arkansas area, and they understand that buying or selling a home is more than just a transaction. It's a life-changing experience. That's why their team of highly seasoned real estate professionals is dedicated to providing exceptional, personalized services for all their clients. They truly take great pride in the relationships they build, and they always work relentlessly on the client's behalf to help them achieve their perfect real estate goals. They always have the client in mind, and I can speak firsthand when I say how reliable, trustworthy, and quick they were. When I was looking to buy my first home, they were there with me every step of the way, answering every question I could think of. They showed me a great amount of knowledge and patience through the process. It's no wonder they've won so many awards for their outstanding services and their excellent relationships with clients. So if you're looking to buy or sell, there is no better option than Clark & Co. Realty.